If you're a dentist and you want to buy an existing dental practice, there are several things you can do to be successful at this process. So first come first, you need to hire a CPA if you don't have one already, and I recommend a dental CPA because the first step is going to be determining how much cash flow you need a month and a year to support your lifestyle. So make sure that you buy a practice that can provide you that cash flow. One of the biggest mistakes I see doctors do is they buy a practice that's simply too small and it won't support their lifestyle, so they have to work in another job. So you don't want to fall into that mistake, and working with a dental CPA, you'll be able to avoid that. So let's see, you determine how much cash flow you need per year. That's going to determine how big of a practice you need to find because the profit and loss statement is going to have the net profits on statement. So that will be able to tell you if the practice will give you that cash flow that you actually need for your lifestyle. You will also need to hire a dental attorney that can represent you because you don't want the seller to represent you as well and give you advice. You need to have your own attorney. And if you can find a dental coach that can help you and give you insight, that's also very, very helpful. After you've done this, you can start your search process. So step number 2 is going to be to contact some kind of a practice broker. So a practice broker is going to have a list of practices that's already for sale, and also what you want to do is narrow down the area where you want to be. Now here's another place where a lot of doctors make the same mistake. That is, they want to buy a practice in a super high class urban or large city neighborhoods, and those are some of the worst areas to own a dental practice in because there are already a lot of dentists there, and the other problem is that patients do not have dental need. And that's a perfect storm to have a very poorly performing dental practice. What you want for a dental practice is to be in an area where there are less providers and high dental need. So those areas are oftentimes either more like between a suburb and a downtown area in a city, and they tend to be more working class or blue collar, and in rural areas. So don't fall in the trap that a lot of doctors do and buy a practice in a super saturated area where patients actually don't even need hardly any dentistry. So once you narrow down the area where you want to be and you contacted a practice broker, you should be able to get some listing and start looking at practices. Now also the other thing is, in more desirable areas, usually there are 10 buyers for each dental practice because there's basically not enough supply of dental practices. So it's going to be very difficult to buy a practice in those areas, and quite frankly, a lot of those areas are not really a good place to own a dental practice because there are already too many dentists and again, low dental need. So the practice broker will give you some ideas where practices are available, so you can start looking at those, and you want to make sure that you have your dental CPA and your attorney look at the paperwork and the financials for each of those practices. Now the other thing you want to do is also want to network. So the other people you want to probably contact to find a dental practice is dental supply reps. For example, Shine, Patterson, Benco, and they also have the practice transition groups, but a lot of times the reps will know which doctor might be interested in retiring, or sometimes doctors get ill, like for example a doctor may get a stroke or something like that and they have to sell a practice quickly, and that actually happens more often than you think. So a lot of times it's really helpful to network and contact a lot of reps and as many dental people as possible, so you get your name out. And again, you want to tell as many dental CPAs and attorneys as well that you're looking for a practice, because they may have a client who haven't listed their practice yet, but they're thinking about retiring or selling their practices soon. And a doctor doesn't have to be old for that. Some doctors sell their practices in their 30s or 40s and move. So networking is going to be very important, and doctors who do really well buying a dental practice are usually the type of kind of friendly people who have a lot of friends and acquaintances, and just overall they have a large network. And also make sure that you also talk to dental coaches, because dental coaches go to hundreds if not thousands of practices and work with thousands of doctors. So again, dental coaches may have a lead on a practice where the doctor's been really thinking about selling or moving or retiring, but they have not listed their practices, but they have told their advisors, like their attorneys, CPAs, and coaches, that they are getting ready to retire. I see this all the time. I have doctors tell me, probably usually years before they put their practices for sale, that they're thinking about retiring or they're thinking about selling their practices. And by the way, I'm Dr. Nagy. I'm a dentist. We own a dental practice with my wife and also do I do coaching and mentoring for dentists to build their success and prosperity. And I also teach orthodontics, comprehensive orthodontics for general dentists and also for specialists. If you have a hard time finding a dental practice after all this in your area, that probably means that you are looking in a super saturated area, which is probably not a good place to own a dental practice. In that case, you may want to widen your scope of search. Like for example, when we were looking for a practice, we looked in a city and nothing was coming up for sale because it was a very saturated area. And the things that were coming up, they were just not very good practices. And what we ended up doing, there was a practice that came up for sale in a rural area it's been for sale for about a year and nobody even looked at it, and that we ended up buying that, and it's only about 45 minutes where we lived, and ended up to be a really great thing. And we pretty much 10 times that practice because it's a very underserved area with a lot of dental need. We get about 20 to 25 emergency calls a day, which you hardly see in a city in a week or in a month a lot of times. So sometimes you have to expand your scope of search if you're not finding a practice in the area where you're at. And here's the second big mistake a lot of times doctors make is if they can't find a practice to buy, they just simply open a practice in the area where they've been looking and they haven't been finding a practice. And again, usually this ends up to be a very poor choice, and a lot of times because it's an oversaturated area with low dental need. So when they start a practice, even after 5-6 years, the practice, I have seen many doctors who are only making $40,000-$50,000 even after 5 to 6 years in business, where they have taken out $800,000 in loans to open a dental practice. And the other big point is, that's very, very important, be super careful who you listen to. You make sure that you have your own advisor, your own CPA, your own dental attorney, your own consultant, because for example, practice brokers usually work for the seller. So of course they want to sell the practice, that's how they get paid. So think about how, whoever's giving you an advice, how do they get paid? Do you pay them? Do they work for you, or do they work for the seller? Because I see very often that buying doctors take advice from the selling doctor, attorney, CPA, or practice broker, which they shouldn't be giving you false advice anyway, but life is life and that happens. So be careful who you listen to and make sure that you hire your own people and you listen to their advice. In the meantime, the other thing you can look for is financing. So while you're looking for a practice, make sure you're also talking to some banks, which your CPA, dental attorney, and your coach can help you with. And also the practice broker will have some lead on some banks as well. That should be pretty easy, but make sure that you also keep that in mind. Once you find a practice, you want to make sure that you value that practice. So you have your dental CPA and your attorney look at it. Make sure you do some chart audits. That's a topic for a different video. But once you find a dental practice, you also, of course, want to do your due diligence. Make sure that the financials are accurate. Make sure that the dental practice is viable. It's in a good area. Make sure the staff is staying. And there's a lot of different points, which we'll cover in a different video. If you have any more questions, my link is in my bio. I do coaching and mentoring as well as teach orthodontics. And also have a free publication on our website, How to Look for Dental Practices to Buy. You can download this free PDF on our website, and hopefully that will help you finding your first dental practice. I wish you best of luck and have a good rest of the day.